trying to break down tasks, particularly initiating, like something like breaking down having a student with a work goal. Let's see how many math problems you can do in the first 5 minutes, or again, 300 seconds, and having a timer so it's more like a race. I know one of the buzz phrases out there is gamification, trying to make it a game or a competition. That would be one little way to do it to help somebody get engaged in the work and make it somewhat fun. I know for me, one of the smartest things I ever did was to take a typing class in middle school with the high school wrestling coach. But typing was a very helpful skill. With one caution, there does seem to be some developmental benefit of learning handwriting in terms of the brain development and some skills with that. So not to totally go over to the keyboard. If there is dysgraphia, difficulties with handwriting, certainly using it for assignments, but there is still some benefit of working with the manual writing. And just continuous note-taking in class too. Even if in college, one of the accommodations is a note-taking service. Somebody will take notes for you, but it's still a good idea to try to take notes in the class to help stay focused. This will be a repeat, but verbal praise, just catching the student doing something well and letting them know. And trying to keep it be specific. Hey, Jim, I really appreciated that you were able to hang up your coat, put away your book bag, and sit down without being reminded. Or something at home. I appreciate that you hung up your jacket without being asked, took your dishes to the sink after dinner, whatever it is. So in terms of, I should go back a second. We start with the positives first. Verbal praise always. And again, it's that frame. Let me catch the student doing something well. And reinforcing partial progress, like was mentioned before. When it gets more formal into a point system, how do you earn extra privileges for even more difficult skills? And so we start with just earning things, the positives. Then, if need be, and most often it will be, there will be the introduction of some sort of penalty or loss where you might lose points if you're non-compliant, whatever the case may be. So what are we talking about? In this one, the BAMS stands for being amazing. So something, it's most likely going to be some targeted skill for a student, and it could be done for a classroom at large. One of the things that we're finding with the accommodations for students with ADHD and other learning differences, these are generally good teaching strategies for everybody. I know increasingly schools that I've seen, if there's a research assignment or a paper due, there's going to be more likely to be progressive assignments. What is your topic? What is your outline? When is the first draft due? And these are set up with progressive deadlines. That started for students with learning differences who had difficulties organizing and breaking down these tasks, but then they become something that's pretty standard these days. And this could be earning points, and you get to choose from the prize drawer. This could be at home, a chore, when you're asked to do a chore, and you can earn points for chore completion. These could be from the rewards, or if you don't listen, these could be the penalties or the loss. There are people taking pictures, so I'll go back through them before. This would be the chore, the reward, and the penalty. And you want it to be a reasonable, by the end of the day, the account is done. Whatever rewards are earned, whatever penalties, no progressive, you lose something for a year or you're grounded for a month. There may be some of those things later on in adolescence, hopefully not that extreme. So variations on a theme, externalizing information. The main point is posting rules, having expectations externalized and listed. And one thing, this is particularly important for parents, make sure you mean it. Don't promise something you can't deliver as a reward, and don't make some sort of punishment that you cannot deliver. And it should be more local. So I've heard, just walking around in my day-to-day life, I've heard parents telling children, this might be during the summer, that you're grounded through the new year or something like that. In a moment of frustration, there's no way that's realistic or even healthy. So make sure you have a plan for what are the rewards, what are the penalties, and for students or your children at home, if you're making a request, state it as a command. I mean, we're not saying it has to be done authoritatively or angrily. No, it's just business. There's a difference between, how would you like to take your plate up to the sink after dinner? I would say any child's answer is, no, thank you. I would prefer not to do that. But if it's stated, it's time to take your plate up to the sink after dinner. That's what I mean by it's a statement, here's what the expectation is. And again, it gets back to the clear communication. Keep it simple, one at a time. Take your plate up, do your homework, get your shower, go to bed. Too much at one time. Take it one at a time. Make sure the student or the child is paying attention. Look at me, look at my nose. Do I have your attention? If there's other distractions, moving to a different place, out into a hallway, or just back away from everything a little bit so you can make eye contact. And making sure, what did you hear me say? Not, did you hear what I said? What's the answer? Yeah, I heard you. No, what did I say? What did I ask you to do? So again, problem-solving wheel. This is more, again, a lot of these are around handling emotions or conflicts, but giving ideas. This follows the notion of, in school, what is an easier test to prepare for? Multiple choice or an essay test? Multiple choice, if you can see the answer, you can recognize it. Oh yeah, I just have to ignore this. If that's taken down, you're making life an essay test. All right, I'm angry, what do I do? And not only is that an executive functioning issue, it's also an experience issue. You know, somebody at 10 years old hasn't had a lot of practice in life yet. So it's how we can set students up for success, or another term that I love, empower them, and give them the wisdom of information such as this and making it accessible. How are you feeling today? Again, putting the visual onto the emotion. We can talk about frustrated, but if somebody's able to, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Most children, they're not going to confuse happy with frustrated, but whether it's frustrated, angry, we're getting the right shade of emotion to help the child first to recognize everything swirling on inside of me. What does it mean in terms of how I'm feeling? And then, how can I manage it? What do I do about it? One of the big challenging areas is managing transitions. You even see it at the conference here. How are we going to handle breaks? Should we have a break or not? We went too long, went too short. There's a lot of adjustment, and we're all able to be flexible. But that can be very frustrating for somebody who's giving a lot. It takes a lot out of them to get through a day of school, or an afternoon, or an unstructured weekend day. So, one, trouble avoided is a problem solved. So if you can plan ahead with some difficult transitions, say, like teachers, what are some of the difficult transitions in your workday? Just shout it out. What are some difficult times for you with students? Yeah, go ahead. From recess to class, yeah, that's a big mode switch. Anybody else? Yeah. Okay, after gym class, yeah. So something where it's radical. One more. Okay. Are there some tasks that seem to be more difficult? Right, right. Right, so there may be a different mental task between art class, say, and mathematics or things like that, and something very physical to getting back into the classroom. So this would be tailor-made, I would imagine, for a little mindfulness exercise coming in from research. That's my fun time. From recess back to the classroom, or preparation between transition from math to art, or maybe vice versa. And even something that's more enjoyable, when as much freedom as you have to set up your schedule, maybe setting art after something more mentally taxing like mathematics as a way to replenish a little bit so that you use a proverbial different part of your brain. But those are some of the nuances that some students don't even have to think about. Okay, we're going outside, we're running around, fine. We're doing math now, sure, I can sit down and do math, but other students are more sensitive to it. An analogy of this would be just food sensitivities. Some individuals are more sensitive to some foods than other people, who can eat whatever they want, whenever they want. In a way, that's what we're talking about behaviorally. So giving advance notice. Okay, in 10 minutes, we'll be coming in from recess. From recess. 5 minutes, we're coming in from recess. And then we're going into research class. But giving the warning. It's not going to guarantee that everybody's ready, but it increases the likelihood hearing 10, 5, get ready now. Getting ready for bed, it can be another one at home. And we'll talk about some strategies for that later. And when the transition time arrives, now this example here is probably more likely at home. As I told you a few minutes ago, it is now time for dinner. Turn off the TV and go wash your hands. Again, a recipe. Stop this, go do that. It doesn't guarantee a smooth transition, but with preparation and 3 simple steps. This, that, then that. And even for younger children, it may be first turn off the TV. Very good, thank you. Go wash your hands, go sit at the table. And at the outset, any sort of negotiations, 5 more minutes, please, I'll be good, repeat the command. And then if there's non-compliance, we can talk about rewards or penalties, things like that. But this is all just business. It's not yelling, it's not insulting, it's just if you do this, then you get the point. If you don't get it, but you still have to do the behavior. As part of fostering self-awareness, and this is part of the school-home communication and collaboration, one of the things that's been pretty well researched, particularly in middle schools, is the note to home. So a report from school to the parents about school behavior, like in the classroom, recess and free time behavior, and any other targeted behaviors. It may be social, it may be talking out in class, whatever the case may be, or a daily productivity chart, how much work was completed in school, whatever is agreed upon as the target. And the other things I think I've covered already. So this is one example. This might be more for a middle schooler where there's different teachers across different periods, but different things that were targeted. Class participation, performs assigned classwork, following rules. There's a rating system at the top, tied in with a point system, but you have flexibility to be creative with this, or as simple or as complex as you want to be. Simpler is usually better. Clarity with the student, clarity for the teachers. Teachers are already overworked, but something where it coordinates with school back and forth. Sharing information. Most of these things, most of the specific plans we'll talk about in a few moments, it's going to be variations on this. When you think about a calendar, a daily planner for adults, college students, high schoolers, all it is empty rows and columns. This is how we divide up time. Now, this is for behavior, but across a school day. All a calendar is, say a daily planner, we're dividing up 24 hours in a day. How do we spend it? What goes where? It's a time machine. The planner, it allows us to look ahead in time. I know where I will be tomorrow at certain times, either up here or down there. But also with students, when am I in class? Later on, we'll talk about when am I going to study for this test coming up? How do we spend ourselves? So this all goes back to part of self-awareness. And what are the executive functions? Organizing behavior across time. But it's also personal. It's how am I spending myself? If 24 hours are like $24, where am I spending it? How much am I spending for sleep? How much am I spending to commute to work or on homework? That's another way to think about it. So, going back to the behavioral report card, if you will, the daily card, it's looking at different increments of time and it's data. One, how are we doing with the behavior plan? Secondly, we can see if there are trends. Behavior seems to go downhill, 6th and 7th period. Is there hunger? Are they eating lunch? Are they taking stimulants and they're not eating as much for lunch as we thought they would be? It allows for problem solving too. For teens in school, one thing to consider is academic accommodations. Extended time on tests, other ones that might be available. Look for outside of school, maybe the benefit of counseling, therapy, medication, maybe coaching. Does it warrant having an academic team meeting with the adolescent, with the family, with the teachers to come up with what are we all working on here, with the teen student being involved? The note to home we talked about, I know academic materials are increasingly digital, but for still old-fashioned materials, having a second set at home in case they're left at school, forgotten, and also if there's any tutoring. It's just useful having that backup. One of the things very helpful for students, particularly middle schoolers and high schoolers, having an advocate at school, a positive connection with another non-parental, non-family adult. And this could be an athletic coach or any guidance counselor, somebody who can check in on the student, help them problem solve, give them reinforcement, letting them know, sort of backing up, yes, you're doing better, here's something to work on, things like that, who just checks in on a regular basis and takes an interest in the student. And along those lines, outside of any behavior plan, positive time between the teen and parents or other family and siblings. Times when you're not worried about earning points or losing points or anything like that, you're just hanging out and getting to know each other, spending positive time. Frankly, I was expecting something a bit more sophisticated. When it comes up with behavior plans, the carrot at the end of the stick, how can I incentivize homework, grades, attendance, getting up in time in the morning, whatever the case may be? What's in it for me? I've had colleagues in psychiatry and psychology talking about their own children When we talk about behavior plans, something like a child with ADHD earning money to put their laundry in the washing machine or do something like that, and not doing that for their sibling, and they go, I shouldn't have to do that with this child, it's not fair. But that's missing the point. For that child, and it goes back to the whole dopamine reward deficiency, nobody likes doing laundry or doing chores, but people without ADHD can generate enough dopamine to get it done. But students, children with ADHD, they need it to be incentivized, something else there. So that's where it's not fair, but not that it's not fair, it's not about fairness. It's about meeting everybody where they're at, because the other sibling, there might be other things that that sibling's working on for which they can earn rewards. So they may be different, even if they're not, and they may be equivalent, even if they're not the same. So, but it's just one of these things. That's the thing about ADHD. It's really hard for people to understand because there are these special accommodations that need to be made that just, they're harder for people to understand. If somebody was on crutches, we would understand. We hold doors, we have ramps, whatever. But for these things, the behavioral plans, it's different. All right, so I'm just going to jump ahead to a couple things here as we wrap up. So one strategy for reading is called the SQ4R strategy. Think about traditional reading. And we don't really teach how to read. We introduce words and things like that. But you're pretty much given a book with a lot of words in it, and you start at the first line and you go line by line by line, and that works well enough for a lot of people. But for somebody who says, oh, there's so many words here, I can't see any, SQ4R is an interactive way to get engaged and to interact with the text differently. So what it has the student do, first, survey the text. Read the title, any headings, any tables, pictures, captions, and get a sense of, what is this about? It's almost like a trailer for a movie. You're not seeing the whole movie yet, but what is this about? Is this a romantic comedy? Is this an action? What is this? Then, based on that, what questions is this chapter going to answer? What are some questions that you can come up with? So if this is about early American history or something like that, well, what was different about early American history from recent history? Or, but starting to give targets for reading, not just I'm going to attack words, I'm going to see how the text answers these questions. So let me read, record my answers, reflect on, okay, how did the text address these things? Recite or write out, all right, let me take notes. How are these questions answered? Or if there are questions at the end of the chapter, reading those questions first, and now you have a target to look for. Then reviewing the answers, and all this is also rehearsing or studying. You still have to read, but it's a different relationship with the text. Rather than diving in and figuring it out, it's what am I looking for? It's like a scavenger hunt. And that's just elaborating on it more. I think we talked about this before with the cognitions. I want to jump ahead to, this is a very nice set of books, Smart But Scattered and Smart But Scattered Teens, specifically about executive functions. I think based on experience with students with ADHD, but anybody wanting to improve executive functions, I find these to be really good books. And just breaking down some of the different executive functions. You can't do them all at the same time. It'd be overwhelming. You want to go in and find out where is the student or teen most invested, what seems to be the biggest problem, somehow prioritizing where do we want to start. Start small, one skill at a time, specific setting or times. Will this be leaving school and arriving home? Maybe it can be coordinated with the school. But for each of these, like I said before, planners are empty rows and columns where we fill in ratings or what we're going to do. The executive functioning training plans, it will be, what is the skill? What is the setting? What are the behaviors? What are the expectations? And then if there's a behavior plan, what are the rewards? What do you get for it? And are there steps? Are there time frames? How long do you have to do this? When does it end? Again, having that end point where I either did it or I didn't, and now I need to go back and do it. Good communication, being clear, here's what I'm asking you to do. Queuing, it is time for you to take out the recycling. Incentives, consistency. This is where it's a family affair, or or at school. It takes an investment to put this into play and have the consistency. Also, throughout this, maintain perspective, have good humor and flexibility while being consistent. So if one day the student messes up and said, oh, you know what? I accidentally took out the recycling on garbage day, so I didn't take out the garbage. If the spirit was, well, that was sort of like just a working memory, that was just a mess up, that was a mistake. But they kept with the spirit of they did the work, I'd say that would be one that they would earn the points, even though there was a good faith mistake. But that's where having the good humor and flexibility about it. They kept in the spirit of the plan. Regardless of the age, you want to do the minimum necessary, the minimum to be supportive, and to give the student what they need to succeed without taking full responsibility of it yourself as a parent or a teacher. Allow them to develop the skill and practice it, but giving them enough support along the way. I think I've covered this enough already. But tracking follow-through on tasks, that'll be the other thing, tracking compliance. So like one thing for getting ready in the morning. On the left-hand side, it's just one example of a flow of what are the check boxes that need to be taken care of. Depending on the age of a child, you could also come up with a plan with pictures next to each one, so that way they can look at it and see it without having to rely on reading. So it might be wake up, brush teeth, eat breakfast, whatever. Make the list with the child or the student. Get buy-in. Talk about, well, do you brush your teeth right after bed or after you eat breakfast? Or when do you get dressed? Before you eat breakfast or after? And problem solve a little bit. Weigh the pros and cons. Well, if you wait till after breakfast, do you wait too long to get dressed? If you get dressed right away, we don't have to worry about it. Do we get clothes out the night before? All these little things that they might have an older or younger sibling that you don't have to deal with because they just get up and get dressed. But for this student, they may need that choreography, figuring out the plan. Having the order, the pictures, actually practicing the routine. Let's give it a run through today or this weekend and see how it works when we don't have to worry about the bus or being driven to class. And then the queuing. How many times, how many reminders will I give you to get up after the alarm goes? A visible clock and timer and plan. And maybe even, depending on the age of the student, there's a similar list for what do you need in your backpack. If you have practice, music practice, sports practice after school, do you have everything you need for those? Variations on a theme. So with the handouts, which if you email me, I can send those along to you. These are also covered in the books, but it's variations on that theme. What is the goal? What's the recipe for this plan?